In the day of prosperity, be happy. But in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one, the day of adversity, as well as the other, so that man will not discover anything that will be after him. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 14. For just as the sufferings of Christ are ours in abundance, so also our comfort is abundant through Christ. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 5. Before I came to prison, I saw what was coming, and I had two considerations especially warm upon my heart. The first was how to be able to endure if my imprisonment was long and wearisome. The second was how to be able to encounter death if that should be my portion here. For the first of these, that verse was great counsel to me that said to pray to God to be strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, for the attaining of all steadfastness and patience joyously. Colossians chapter 1, verse 11. For about a year before I was imprisoned, I could seldom go to God in prayer, but that verse would thrust itself into my mind and persuade me that if I would ever go through much suffering, I must have all patience, especially if I would endure it joyfully. As to the second consideration of how to encounter death, 2 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 9 was a great use to me. We had the sentence of death within ourselves, so that we would not trust in ourselves, but in God, who raises the dead. By this verse, I was made to see that if ever I would suffer rightly, I must first pass a sentence of death upon everything that can properly be called a thing of this life, even to consider myself, my wife, my children, my health, my enjoyments, and all as dead to me, and myself as dead to them. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Matthew chapter 10, verse 37. Also I knew that I needed to live upon God, who is invisible. As Paul said in another place, the way not to faint is to look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 18. So I reasoned with myself that if I'm only prepared for prison, then I will not be prepared for the whip or the stocks. If I prepared only for these, then I would not be ready to face banishment. Further, if I concluded that banishment is the worst that might happen to me, then I would be surprised if I were to face death. So I saw that the best way to go through sufferings is to trust in God through Christ, regarding the world to come, and regarding this world, to have the mindset that Sheol as my home, I make my bed in the darkness. If I call to the pit, you are my father, to the worm, my mother and my sister. Job chapter 17, verse 13 and 14. That is to familiarize these things to me. But despite these helps, I found myself to be human and compassed with infirmities. The parting with my wife and poor children has often been to me as the pulling my flesh from my bones, not only because I love their visits, but also because I have often thought of the many hardships, miseries, and needs that my poor family was likely to face if I were to be taken from them, especially my poor blind child, who lay nearer my heart than all I had besides. Oh, the thoughts of the hardship that my blind one might endure would break my heart to pieces. My poor blind child, what sorrow you are likely to have for your portion in this world. You will be beaten and must beg, suffer hunger, cold, nakedness, and 1,000 calamities, though I cannot even bear that the wind would blow upon you. I thought I was as a man who was pulling down his house upon the head of his wife and children. Yet, as I thought about these things, I knew that I must leave them all in the hands of God, though it hurt much to leave them. I knew that I must do it, and there was no better place to leave them than in the hands of God. I then thought of those 2 milk cows that were to carry the ark of God into another country, and had to leave their calves behind them. 1 Samuel chapter 6, verse 10 to 12.